Hello and welcome to the Can't Be Podcast. Our Monday show is back. I'm Dan Rolinson, joined by Mat Kendrick. Matt, you've been away on holiday. It's your first day back at school, so to speak. How are you?
Picked the wrong week to go away on holiday, didn't I? It's supposed to be glorious sunshine this week, but had a lovely time on the Welsh coast, mate. Consuming fish and chips and pizza most nights. So, very pleasant.
I was going to ask what you got up to. Let's have a bit of chat about your holiday before we get into the Liverpool defeat. Wales, you say, was it?
Yeah, I went to a place called Claret Bay. It was a very last minute .com job. And it was supposed to be for a week, but my son made us cut it short for his first experience of European football. A dead rubber against Hibernian. But so it was very pleasant, mate. Yeah, we didn't really do much. I'm not the most adventurous, as you can see. So it's just kind of driving from one coastal town to the other, finding the nearest chippy, having to kick around on the beach, and then repeat, basically. So, yeah, perfect.
You've also got your little studio set up at home now done as well. You've got your microphone all in place, got a Villa shirt in the background, your prints on the wall as well, same one I've got. That's nice. So you've actually got yours on the wall, whereas I've just got mine on the floor at the moment. Do you feel nice now you're in a little work from home environment rather than the bedroom?
I'm trying to make an effort for you, Dan, aren't I? You know, after all this time. Do you remember back in the day? I think we did a quiz and I'd got like a ladder. I was in my son's bedroom and I had to use a kind of ladder as a makeshift kind of microphone stand or whatever it was.
Yeah, I'll put a picture of that up on screen or a clip from that. You're wearing a Villa tie, weren't you? I'm sure it was a quiz. A Villa shirt, a Villa tie.
It might have been over that shirt, actually. Might have been what reminded me.
Probably was, actually. We've come a long way, haven't we?
Not that far, but we're making steady progress.
Let's talk about Liverpool then and the weekend. What's your general reaction to it? Is it all doom and gloom for you, or is it just one bad day at the office?
I don't think it's all doom and gloom, and I think the thing that encourages me is, you know, we all had the collective Villa fan base, or certainly the elements that you see across social media, had a mini meltdown or a massive meltdown after Newcastle and thought, you know, it's the end of the world, and, you know, our hopes for the season were dashed, and then we followed it up fairly impressively, I think, albeit against teams we expected to beat in Everton, Burnley and Hibernian twice. Just the manager's he exudes calm for me, and I think that's really, really important. I think that the manner of the defeats and the deficit of the defeats has been disappointing, but the defeats have come against teams who finished higher than us last season. I think we've still got to be, you know, if you want to challenge the elite or you want to kind of break into that territory, you can't do it straight away. I think that the thing that worries me a little bit is when we do concede a goal, I think we look vulnerable. I think, you know, we've seen it at Villa Park so often. When we score the first goal, we score an early goal, and then we go on and control the game and we go and win the game. I think the opposite is true. When we concede a goal, particularly away from home, I think that's something, you know, a kind of mental toughness perhaps that Villa need to get used to. But having shot ourselves in the foot so early on yesterday, I don't think there was ever really a way back.
The bulk of today's show is going to be driven by the YouTube comments from yesterday's post-match show that we did, which are overwhelmingly negative, I would say. And I'm hoping we might be able to provide a bit of balance, possibly. The manner of the performances you just mentioned there for Newcastle and Liverpool is the concern for me, the way we've lost more so than the result in isolation. Very good teams, like you said, who both finished in the top 5 last year. For Villa to go away to those stadiums as well and get them out of the way early season is kind of a blessing in one sense. We haven't got to go to Anfield or St James's again. I think if those specific games happened against lesser opposition, let's say we went away to Crystal Palace and lost 5-1 on the opening day, and went away to Goodison Park and lost 3-0 in the way we did to Liverpool yesterday, I'd be a lot more concerned about that because of the opposition. Newcastle at St James's and Liverpool at Anfield are very, very good. I know that Villa want to get to a place where we're competing for the top 6, top 4, and to do that you have to beat the sides that are around you and the good sides in the division. I don't think the result is the end of the world, but the way we've lost in those 2 games does worry me a bit.
Yeah, I think, again, Unai Emery, the bits that I heard of him post-match, he was very, very honest, saying Liverpool are a better team than us. You know, that's the level that we're striving for, but we're not there yet. It's a 38-game season. Let's see how close we can get over the course of the season. And that encouraged me in a way. I know perhaps it sounds a little bit defeatist. We're not as good. I don't think he was saying we can't go and take them on. I think it was the contrary of that. But just for a bit of context, we're not quite there yet. And I find that encouraging rather than a manager coming out and saying, well, VAR should have taken a closer look at that first goal and that kind of thing. He doesn't make excuses. He knows where the issues are and he knows it's on him to improve it. I'm not saying Unai Emery goes gung-ho. I think he tries to set his team up in a very controlled way. But does he need to compromise something a little bit more? We've spoken about this high line defending so highly and it leaves you vulnerable. That's what's done us again yesterday. So if he is going to play that high line, what's the insurance policy? I think you mentioned a Villa fan on Twitter off air, like called Alex Berwick. Who I always tend to see him as one of the voices of reason in a lot of noise. And and I think the pundits pointed it out last night as well, Jermaine Genius, that if you're going to play that high line, you can't allow people like Trent Alexander-Arnold that amount of time on the ball. So you can't have both. If you've got a high line, you've got to make sure that your forward players and your midfielders are following in as well and pressing high. Because if you don't do either, you're leaving yourself super vulnerable. And it's moments like that and it's things like that Unai Emery will have been so frustrated by that he will make sure that he addresses it as soon as he possibly can.
It's the lack of a press that doesn't suit the high line either. The match of the day analysis you mentioned there showed Diaby and Watkins just not closing down. And that was only a couple of clips they showed rather than the whole performance. But if that happens at any point throughout the game, defeats the purpose of the high line because Villa are so compressed up the pitch that it only takes one ball to bypass the whole side. Whereas if Watkins and Diaby are on everything and don't allow Liverpool space, that long ball can't go past the high line because it's closed down at the first instance. You defend from the front, don't you? I thought the analysis for the match of the day was interesting on Trent's position as well. Obviously, there's a lot of talk about the inverted fullback and him dropping into midfield and that leaving massive space down the right back position normally for a counter-attack, which would have been great for Villa to run into that space. The little clip they showed of him switching with Matip and Matip going out to the right back and Trent almost sitting as a centre-half and just having so much space to ping balls. Again, a massive part of Villa's downfall yesterday, giving Trent so much room, so much time to play a pass. We all know how good he is at passing and how capable of a footballer he is. So for Villa and Emery to have set up with a game plan to play a high line, to not have a great press from the front, and to give Trent so much space to just basically do whatever he wants, feels a little bit of a worry to me that was overlooked.
Let's face it, this is a Liverpool team. It's kind of a changing of the guard at Liverpool. Yeah. And Klopp is one of football's, the Premier League's, Europe's elite coaches as well. True. So it's not as if you're going to have different challenges each week. And I think Klopp said post-match, didn't he, that's probably as near to perfect a performance as I've seen from my team for a while. And we know Liverpool haven't reached the heights of 2 or 3 years ago consistently. But I think you've got to give credit to them. It's one of those ones where it's not great going into an international break because we can all dwell on it and be frustrated about it rather than going in on the back of a positive result. But we know that when Villa come back against Crystal Palace a week on Saturday, we know after the Newcastle game, it's not the end of the world. Emery will find a way. It's when I think we've got Chelsea away, haven't we? The following week, which is not the challenge that it once was, but it's finding a way to cope with the top teams on their own patch, really, when we're probably not going to see as much of the ball. It's how we deal with that. And the other thing that frustrated me yesterday was conceded 2 goals from set pieces. Liverpool find lots of different ways to carve teams open, but to give them that, whether or not you think that it should have been disallowed for an offside. Was it Salah in the line of vision of Martinez? A, how are we giving away that corner so carelessly in the first place so early in a game? And B, how's your man? I can't even pronounce it, Dan. I'm not gonna try. As the man says. How are we giving him that amount of time to strike that ball there? And then the third goal from the corner. I just think probably Luca Dean had just had enough for the day, to be honest, because he was being given quite a torrid time down that flank, and it's just switching off again. Those are the basics, aren't they? And I think Emery said, didn't he, that how clinical Liverpool were versus how clinical we weren't. Those 3 moments that stuck it away. We've probably had 2 or 3 half decent chances that we've not made the most of. So
Liverpool had 6, 7, 8, 9 very good chances that could have been goals as well. That Nunes one, the header that's just gone past the post for an open goal, countless other ones where you think, oh, we've been kind of carved open once again. But the word you use there, basics, is what it was. And we said on the post-match show yesterday, a bit of naivety as well. That first goal is the example of just everything going wrong. The Pau Torres trying to play out from the back and kind of fluffing his lines and giving away a cheap corner early on at Anfield. Again, recipe for disaster to get them up for it, to have the opportunity for an early goal. Szoboszlai having acres of space to run into unmarked, just standing in a bit of no man's land, really. But you know, as soon as the ball comes through, he's going to start a move into the box. Or how he was left to have so much space is baffling. And then I suppose we will talk about whether it was offside. So we had a comment from Martin who said, first goal, Salah's offside and he's obscuring Emmy's view. Discuss. And we didn't mention it in the show yesterday. I don't know why, because I'd seen it at the time, but we spoke about so many other different things. Weirdly, match of the day didn't talk about it either. I thought maybe the pundits would have looked at different angles and stuff. I suppose it's because it's Liverpool and they've won and they don't really care. But all those things combined, we give away a cheap corner, you give your man loads of space. It probably should have been ruled out by VAR as well. There's so many things there that go wrong that kind of conspire against Villa. What are you supposed to do against that? You 1-0 down after 3 minutes and you feel like the game's going to be over. Should it have been offside, do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I'm obviously biased, so I think every goal that's scored against us should be ruled out for some reason. But that one had a justifiable reason, in my sense, because, stating the obvious, isn't it? If you're in somebody's eye line and they cannot
you're interfering with play, yeah.
But the ball is, of course you're interfering with play. But it's interesting, isn't it? Because, VAR and the dodgy calls can dominate analysis of football matches, but you think it could have at least been mentioned. Even if they didn't spend 10 minutes deconstructing it from lots of different angles, it was a consideration. I think Villa should have played their way into the game. I don't think that opportunity should have arisen anyway. But when it does arise and it goes against you, you do get the kind of feeling of, here we go, it's going to be one of those games.
I've got the quote from Ian Wright. He said, what we saw is that Mo Salah is obstructing Emi Martinez's line of vision. So Howard Webb's probably going to have to make another phone call this week because that is offside and that is interfering with Emi Martinez. I don't understand anymore. Yes, same, Ian. None of us understand anymore. I've seen a quote from somebody else saying that there's so much time dominated by kind of previews and post-match shows on the Premier League that it's all talk about these decisions that you don't even get a chance to talk about the football anymore. It's always about a referee or a VAR call. And I don't want this show to descend into that because I don't want to make excuses that Villa didn't lose yesterday because of VAR. They lost because they were the inferior side. But if that goal is rightly ruled out for offside in the 3rd minute of the game plan doesn't change, does it? If you go to Anfield with a plan and you're down after 3 minutes, everything you prepared for has gone out the window.
Yeah. It's one of those ones. I don't know what we can do about it, though, other than have a better game plan. Have a better plan B for when those things do happen.
But Ian Wright's right. If Howard Webb comes out and says, "Oh, we apologise to Aston Villa, that should have been ruled out for offside," it's like, well, what are we supposed to do with that? It's meaningless now. Get it right in the first place, and we shouldn't have to have an apology.
Yeah, I'm still a big advocate of not necessarily the on-field referee, and not necessarily in press conference form where they're grilled on stuff, but referees should, or the refereeing team, the officiating team should have to provide a report that's made public at the end of each game. And again, it doesn't necessarily, if decisions are wrong or go against you, it's not going to suddenly conjure up the magic lost points, but it's going to shape our understanding as we go along.
Let's go through some of the comments from yesterday's post-match show then. We always say that the post-match reaction that we do on a match day is generally a bit more raw or more emotional than a show that we do later in the week because we have time to think about things or watch things back or see replays and things like that. So already this season, I've said things on the Sunday or the Saturday where I've come to do the recording on a Monday and thought, I was maybe a bit harsh on so-and-so there, or I shouldn't really have said that. And I have the platform to be able to correct myself and say, shouldn't really have said that. So I've got, 10 or 12 comments here from yesterday's post-match show that were commented on YouTube at 6 o'clock last night or whatever, when the people commenting maybe had that same feeling we do of everything's racing around my head, like, I just need to get something out. And maybe in hindsight, they would go back to that YouTube comment and think, I shouldn't really have said that. So I don't really want to come across here that I'm I've got a list of 10 names here, and I'm going, you're stupid, you're saying the wrong thing, because maybe with the hindsight of another 24 hours that you and me have had, they would think slightly differently as well, because there's some here that we're going to talk through where I absolutely disagree, and others where I absolutely do agree. I just don't want it to come across as we're like I said, pointing someone out as going, shut up, you're talking nonsense, because everyone's opinion is valid. So, from Dr. AVFC, not that doctor, will we struggle this season with games following the Conference League matches like West Ham did last year? I know we rested most of the team against Hibernian on Thursday, but it still hampers the preparation.
I think it could be a factor. You know, I've not been on that many times this season, but the times I have been on, I can hear myself like a broken record, kind of worrying about the squad depth. And I do still feel that's the case. I looked at the bench yesterday. I actually thought the bench looked quite strong. Mm-hmm. But then you lose Diego Carlos. And then, you know, I don't know the extent of the injury. I think Emery played it down a little bit, so I don't think it's a long-term one. We haven't had to contend with this, really. You know, we've been out of the cup competitions, the domestic cup competitions, quite early, frustratingly early. In a lot of the recent years, we haven't had Europe for 13 years. So I'm not sure I'd put that down as the reason why we lost on yesterday, but agreed. I do think it's something that we need to factor in, because you know, we had the situation. I know I hark back to olden times, but we had the situation where Martin O'Neill was reluctant to rotate his squad a lot for the Premier League. He'd got a core of 13, 14 players. And when he did decide to do it for some of the European matches, you know, the Moscow one stands out. We all kind of jumped on our high horse and were appalled by it. So it's a real balancing act for Emery. And now that the transfer window has been and gone, this is what we've got pretty much going forwards. So, you know, I was thinking about this. A bit of a long-winded answer to your question, Dan, but I was thinking about this earlier. The injury blows that we seem to have suffered so far this year with Ramsey, Buendia, Mings, Moreno. Did we have any injuries during the 6 months of Emery's reign last year, or any notable ones?
Off the top of my head, I can't think of any. There would have been a couple of games where people missed a handful of games. I think then Donk had a period out, didn't he? But he was a fringe player anyway. I don't think there was anybody that you would
Cash
maybe
was out
consider
for a while, I think, wasn't he?
First team, yeah, Cash. Bailey had a few missing as well, which is standard for him, but no real kind of serious injuries anywhere. That the Ramsey and Moreno ones are vastly underrated, I think, that haven't really been spoken about too much. And Buendia, actually. I'll get on to him in a sec. Ramsey and Moreno both playing on the same side of the pitch is a massive hole for us now. I think Dean played well, didn't he, against the sides that Villa expect to be. He was good against Hibs, good against Everton, been really exposed against Newcastle and Liverpool now. He's not the answer long term, definitely not. Moreno's so key to the way we play, and he transformed us when he joined in January to the way Emery wants to play. Having pace allows us to play further up because he can get back if needs be. And linking up with Ramsey down that side, that was a really key component to the way Villa played last year. We've spoken enough about Tyrone Mings and what we miss from him in terms of his physical presence and his leadership. Buendia is someone that hasn't really been spoken about, but his work rate and what he offers going forward and allowing us to press higher up the pitch, I think we miss that massively as well.
I think it's energy and aggression in lots of areas of the pitch. And Mings is an interesting one for me, because people might scoff at this, but I mean, Torres is an experienced footballer who's played at a top level football in Europe. I actually think half a dozen games alongside Tyrone Mings would have been a blessing for him, because he's having to kind of learn. You know, we talk about leaders, and you know, you've probably got John McGinn as the captain, who's your main leader in there. But who's guiding? Like I said, it probably sounds a bit pathetic, really, because Torres is an experienced player, but he's learning in a very, very different league to what he's been used to. So, who's guiding him? Who's the voice that's helping him through, if you like? Moreno as well, just the sheer energy. I think, you know, for a continental fullback who prides himself on going forward, I think he's quite aggressive defensively as well. I think, you know, and I'm not going to start digging out Luca Dean, because I think, he's had a difficult time, but he's probably not known until Friday where he's going to be playing his football. You know, that's
true.
not an excuse because
No.
footballers were paid a lot of money to be professional throughout. But I think that left side of defence, it worried me against Liverpool. It's a massive blow to us, really, when we're expecting to have a squad that could compete on 3 or 4 fronts, to be losing 3 or 4 key players now. And where Villa are now, even if the players that are injured aren't necessarily starters, they're still key players because they give Emery options either mid-game or they give him options depending on the competition, depending on the opposition. So it's something that we've had to contend with. Having done that, we've played 4 games in the Premier League. We've won the games we were expected to win, and we've lost the games we were expected to lose. So I don't think it is a time for a massive meltdown. I think it's a frustrating time because we want to be closer to the teams that we've lost to. And if we lose, we want to lose a brave 1-0 defeat where we've hit the crossbar 6 times or whatever and they fluked a winner or whatever, rather than being dismantled. I think we're probably hovering around where we should be at the moment.
Yeah, I'm inclined to agree. I think it's just the manner of the way we've lost is the concerning thing. The results in isolation aren't the end of the world. And like I said at the start, if those games happened against lesser opposition, I'd be more worried than I am. The original question that we said there about was whether the Conference League affects the Premier League. For this one specifically, definitely not. That Hibs game was a foregone conclusion. We didn't rotate as much as maybe some people expected, but the game was done. I don't think Emery wasn't consumed by Hibernian and wasn't prepared for Anfield. It's absolutely no chance. But going forward, that will be that will impact at some stage. I think when we come back for the international break, it's Palace, Legia Warsaw, and Chelsea in a week. Now going away to Poland in what could be a really fiery atmosphere and maybe a difficult game, and if things don't go your way, and then coming back to play at Stamford Bridge on the Sunday. That could be where you start to say, well, if we weren't playing in Poland on Thursday, maybe we'd be more prepared for Sunday's game. But Emery is the perfect manager to understand that, and hopefully he'll be able to translate that knowledge onto the players. I'll do these in a semi-random order, but because you mentioned Diego Carlos before about the injuries, let's do this one from Lestrom. He said, Carlos appears to be made of glass, which is probably a touch harsh. We don't know quite what the extent of the injury is yet. It's obviously international break now. The next game for Villa is the 16th of September. So if he was back available for that, I think that'd be a bonus. Yeah, just annoying, isn't it, Diego Carlos getting injured? We'll speak about him a little bit later in a different section, but to sign for us and get injured for the season and then come back and play a couple of consecutive 90 minutes and then get injured again against Liverpool. I think his injury record before joining us, I think he missed something like 7 or 8 games in his entire career. And he comes to Villa and misses an entire season and then gets injured again. So just a bit frustrating, Diego Carlos. I think it's maybe a bit harsh to say that he's made of glass because he's a big lad. But it's just, really annoying.
Yeah, listen, it is frustrating. You know, we signed Torres and Mings gets injured. We sign another centre half.
Good job,
Carlos. I don't know. I've not seen the incident for the. When Carlos got injured, I don't know whether it looked like a muscle injury. You know, it's a big unit, so sometimes powerful. I don't know whether this is too easy a generalisation. Sometimes powerful players suffer muscle injuries, you know, kind of more readily than others. But what can you do, Dan? You know, it's a competitive sport played at a million miles an hour. Yeah. You know, it's a contact sport still. So you're gonna suffer these setbacks. All you can do is hope that your recruitment and your academy system provides you enough support around the edges. And we'll see, won't we? We'll see whether that's the case this season.
Michael says, pathetic. Our transfer window was bad. We need much more than 3 players and a loan move for Longley. But obviously these owners are not so ambitious. They should put their money where their mouth is. We were net spend 10th in the league.
I don't know. I think, listen, what I would say before I annoy anybody in the comments is that an hour, 2 hours after the final whistle in a game where you've been heavily beaten on any kind of social media platform is probably going to, you know, I'd rather Michael vent there than, you know, come and start booing the owners outside the ground a week on Saturday or a week on Sunday or whatever. It's a weird one because there's some of the money that's been thrown around for players with a handful of games Premier League experience is ridiculous. So I can see why people get seduced by that they want us to be, you know, on that kind of gravy train or whatever the phrase is. I actually think that if that entire squad is fit and available, I think it's a squad that can match what we did last year in the Premier League and be hopeful of advancing. You know, we don't want to jinx it by saying how Villa are one of the favourites in the Conference League, but just have again. I think the squad's good, and I just think you need to be careful about just spending stupid money. Obviously, we want to compete straight away. Emery's shown that with the players that he got, look at the transformation with the players that he got last year. You know, I don't think reaching for a checkbook is always the answer. But perhaps I lack the ambition as well. But I don't know what's your thoughts on it.
I don't think it's a lack of ambition whatsoever, and I think we've had firstly a very good window overall. And I think there's a big obsession now with things like specifically like net spend. It's something that you wouldn't have heard that as a phrase 10 years ago, maybe, that so-and-so club's only got a certain net spend, so that means that they've not done this or they haven't done that. If you factor in that we sold Cameron Archer, Philogene and Aaron Ramsey for 40 million-ish, let's just say. In years gone by, those players have just been loaned out and loaned out and loaned out and bought back, loaned out again. Nothing really happening with them, no progression. I'm going off on one a little bit here, but those players have been sold permanently with buybacks, so Villa can control the situation that if they are good enough and they progress in Ramsey and Archer's case in the Premier League, Villa could activate a buyback and bring them back and integrate them into their squad. I get all that. I think that's good business, makes sense. And from a financial perspective, it boosts Villa's income by 40 odd million. And with the FFP rules and stuff, it's pure profit because they're academy players and you can spread the wealth over contracts or whatever. Now, Villa's net spend, I don't actually know what it was in terms of the figure. If those three players I just mentioned had been loaned again, Villa's net spend would have been 40 million better off in terms of it would look like we'd have spent 40 million more, which I would imagine, considering how much the Premier League has spent, probably doesn't boost us up massively, but would have made our net spend look like we'd spent more. Do you know what I'm saying? So you could then have gone, well, Villa's net spend's actually okay because they've actually spent 90 million instead of 50 or whatever the figures are. So this obsession with net spend, I just don't really get, to be honest. I don't think that's the measure of a good side or a good squad that, well, you spent loads of money, so they must be good. Look at Chelsea. For Villa, I just don't get it. I think you see sides that spend lots of money or recruit lots of players in one go and sign 7, 8 first. Forest, perfect example. I think they signed 7 on deadline day alone. So for Villa to have signed 5 in the end, 2 of those loans for now in Longley and Zaniolo, it's just minor surgery, and that's what Villa needed, really. That transfer window is not really accounted for Mings and Buendia being injured in the first week of the season. And like you, I think if all the squad was fully fit for the entire season, which it's never going to be, but if it was, there's a group of players there that are capable of putting a top 7 run together again and hopefully go well in one of the cup competitions as well. So I think it's easy to look at with hindsight with those 2 injuries and a couple of losses early in the season and that the net spend isn't that good and go, Villa's owners aren't ambitious, they should have done more. I think you can do too much as well. And if Villa would have signed 9 or 10 players this window, I'd almost be more concerned with that, thinking, well, what's the strategy here? What are we doing?
Yeah, I remember we went on the mad recruitment splurge when we first got promoted and we spent about 130 million quid or something like that. And
like 10 players.
13 players or whatever, and they're all 10 million pound players. And we're saying then, you know, the sign of evolution would be if we're still spending towards 100 million quid, but we're signing 2 or 3 players of a higher quality. Now, premiums for players has gone up anyway in the last 3 or 4 years to a ridiculous extent. But that's what we're doing. We're tweaking and we're evolving rather than thinking that we've got to rip it up every single summer and start again. Emery's proven that make players better with good coaching, with organisation, with tactical nous. I'd like him to kind of work with what he's got. I'd like him to have a free chance to do that without them all being crocked. But I don't think it's been a disaster. You know, if you wanted to be hypercritical, you could say, well, we're all still a little bit worried when Robin Olsen is in goal. So was there an option for a lone goalkeeper there? You know, probably a little bit light in terms of proper right backs, but he thinks we've got Consru, we can play there. So there's only, you know, we'd all probably want another centre forward with Archie gone, but he's got players in Diaby and Zaniolo who can probably play centrally right up top if needs be. So he must have been satisfied with that squad. Now, because I'm not saying the manager, the coach, is so highly respected that he gets everything that he wants. I don't think that's healthy. I think the owners and his bosses need to kick back on some things, but he pretty much has had what he's wanted in terms of the director of football set up around him, the coaches that he wants, and these things. So I can't imagine him being that dissatisfied with what we've done.
Yeah, there was a follow-up comment from I'm Bonkers, which maybe says more about what this comment could be than anything. He said, we keep buying good players, but not top 6 quality players. Who would Liverpool, Man City or Arsenal, for example, swap to get one of Villa's outfield players? I'd say no one. Again, disagree. I think there's a lot of players in that Villa side, and I've said it before, that I think we're almost getting to the stage that if Villa don't start achieving top 6 finishes, we have players who are capable of playing in the Europa League and the Champions League. And eventually, if the two don't marry up, we are going to start to lose some of those first-team players. Douglas Luiz could play for a top 4 club. I know he said outfield, but Emi Martinez could play for a top 4 club. I'd argue Ollie Watkins could play for a top 6 club.
Look at who we've signed this summer, and you're not telling me that Torres hasn't been on the radar of the top 4 or 5 clubs. Likewise, Tielemans been linked with the bulk of them for the last 3 or 4 years. Diaby as well. We are signing players from that pool now.
Agreed, yeah. I know, I'm with you. I don't really know what the foundation for that comment comes from. I get that Torres hasn't started very well, or in a couple of games he hasn't played well. Torres looked very good in the games where Villa have played well and had a lot of the ball, and he will be a good player for us. Diaby is
Dan, I know this is not you, but beating the teams who we should beat is progress.
You agree? Yeah, I've said the same, yeah.
Previously we played crap against the crap teams and the good teams. Exactly, so, yeah. Beating the teams that we should be will get us to 7th. It's difficult, isn't it? Because we've set off with so many expectations, and we have made some in my mind exciting additions. So we do expect to. We don't expect to lose ever again, do we? Really, with football fans, we shouldn't ever lose again. And season ticket prices have gone up, and the cost of shirts and cost of living, all these kind of things. It is frustrating when we have these setbacks, but sometimes they can just be setbacks. It don't mean that everything needs ripping apart.
We had a couple of negative comments in a row there, and there are a handful more I could have picked, and I did pick, but I don't want to focus on it too much, because like you, I don't think this is the end of the world, and I think social media comments give that vibe sometimes, and everyone, like I said, is entitled to their opinion, but I think maybe with hindsight, some of these comments would look different 24, 48 hours after the kind of raw emotion of full time. The AVFC Faithful says, I don't get the negativity in the comments. We know this team has bounce back ability, and Unai will be working all international break to fix the defensive issues. 6 points from 4 I probably would have taken, as you still have to win the easier games, and we've done that. There are things to work on, of course, but it's been a pretty good start, all things considered. I think we're average at the moment. We're about where we probably should be. We've beat the size that we expect to, and got 6 points in the league. It's now where we assess Villa in the next month or so. It's such a small sample size still, isn't it? 4 games in the Premier League. I'm not really concerned about how the league table looks yet. It's irrelevant. It's fine. Like we're okay. I'd like us to be better than okay, but I think it will come.
Yeah, if we'd have drawn all 3 away games, we'd have been no better off, would we? I'm with you. Perhaps we should be a point better off. Perhaps we should have gone to Liverpool or Newcastle and been strong enough to take a point. But in the grand scheme of things, like I said, it's too early to make kind of any kind of wild predictions. I'm fairly comfortable with where we're at. So I'm not comfortable when we concede goals. 8 goals conceded in those 2 games is not great. Perhaps I'm investing too much trust and hope, but I expect us to come out really strong against Crystal Palace and to win that game. But we've just got a long, frustrating wait before we can prove that theory.
Let's have a bit of pro Pau Torres chat for a change from Robot Sausage Music, which is a great username. I like the YouTube comment usernames because they're just so random. The thing about Pau Torres is...
What's that site where you can kind of find the exact location? Is it 3 words or whatever?
What 3 words? Yeah, I should Google that. Should I know Robot Sausage Music and what country is that? I might do that while you're chatting.
If it was your postcode? What if it was like just on your front drive or something?
Oh, I'm going to have to check that because I feel paranoid. Anyway, he or she says, the thing about Pau Torres is, yes, he's made a few mistakes, but so did Toro Mings, and lots of people got in on his back and then returned him around, and now prior to the injury, he was amazing. Got a feeling Pau's time will come. Let's be patient. Bit of more measured comment there about Torres, and I've probably want to kind of dig him out a little bit, and I don't mean it to be that way at all. I said yesterday in the post-match show, defensively, he still leaves a little bit to be desired, But going forward, if he's going to be on the ball and Villa have got possession, he will be a lethal asset for us because he'll play a ball like he did for John Durant at Villa Park on Thursday to Ollie Watkins in a Premier League game, and we'll score and win. We'll go, oh, Pau Torres, great footballer. Now let me find out where Robot Sausage Music is stalking me from.
We've raved about Trent Alexander-Arnold and his ability on the ball earlier in this podcast, and he's probably been the most criticised defender in the Premier League in the last season, certainly. So, it's only one game that Klopp's played him in that role, and I think he made him captain, gave him a bit of responsibility for that. But why can't Torres? Can we find the perfect way that Torres is not exposed the way that he has been exposed, but that can bring out the best in him as a kind of ball playing defender? So again, I'm not in any hurry to write him off. I think he's going to be a cracking player for us.
I couldn't find Robot Sausage Music, but I found Robot Massage Music as an alternative, and that's Montana in the US. So welcome if you're listening. Probably one of the last comments we're going to go through, I think. Actually, I'll do two together because I think they were of a similar nature. From Owen, he says, we changed our style of play to play out from the back last season. We made a balls of it in a few games, but we've persisted and we've become a better team. I see the high line as the same challenge for the team. Let's support the team and players and accept that we will lose a number of games making mistakes or playing poorly, implementing our improving style. And Villa Rule 06. Losing at St James's and Anfield is nothing to get into a crisis about. However, the manner of the defeats have both been poor. Yesterday, was the first big sign of the hole that Mings has left. It's not the end of the world. There's been so much good stuff and no doubt a lot more to come. I think that's a pretty rounded analysis of it to kind of end the show. That yes, Liverpool and Newcastle were hopefully blips in the overall season that we'll look back on and go, it wasn't a great start, but Villa kind of got themselves into gear later in the year and had a good season still. Overall, we've seen enough from Emery to believe that he is the right manager to sort things out and get things right. And yeah, like I say, hopefully things only go up from here.
Yeah, I'm completely with it. I'm completely on side with that. It's 4 games in. It'd be interesting. I know I don't want to wish time away. It'd be interesting to see when Liverpool come to Villa Park and Newcastle come to Villa Park, how we compete with the top teams on our own patch. That was it sounds a bit silly, but from Emery's first game against Manchester United, I know it's a Manchester United that was a fading force. For him to be able to show that transformation within 45 minutes and getting Villa capable of taking on, teams that would have traditionally lost to. I get he's very, very calm and measured man, but I get the impression that he takes defeats as like a kind of dagger to his heart in a way, as if to say, well, why didn't I think of that? Or have I miscommunicated something to my players that they've allowed that to happen? And I just get the sense that the cogs are turning. And I think that Emery, it's a massive cliche that you learn more in defeat than you do in victory. But I think it's true. Probably kicking himself for why didn't I do that? Or how can I change that? And I find it an exciting journey to be on with a manager who's never satisfied and who's always questioning himself and his people around him. And I wonder if he's got a kind of WhatsApp group or a little kind of mini YouTube channel where he vents after matches, because, I think he'd have been really, really annoyed about it, but calm and measured enough to say, well, okay, I've got a couple of weeks to try and fix this, and we'll see how we go next time. There's one thing I want to mention, Dan, and it's how ridiculous is it yesterday that Villa games, Liverpool versus Villa, is not on television?
Oh, I know.
In the UK now. That would have been screened in I'm probably not even exaggerating now, 50 countries around the world, more than that. The cameras are there, the cameramen or camera women are there. Everything's set up. All the satellite feeds are set up. Yet we can't watch it in this country. Yet if we want to watch things in a legal way, that's legal, not illegal. If you want to watch things in a legal way, you're going to have to probably spend towards £100 to subscribe for everything. I just think it's ridiculous.
It should be how it was when we had probably our best growth spurt on the podcast in Project Restart, when every game was on TV. For the money that you have to pay to subscribe to Amazon, BT, Sky Sports, you should have a red button service or whatever where you just press it and it's got every single game to watch and you pick the one you want to watch. Because like you said, they're covering it anyway. The fact that there are so many different ways to watch a game illegally, and that's such a big almost business, I suppose, that's because of the rules that are in place that are so stringent against just broadcasting every Premier League game. It's the biggest league in the world. We should have access to these games. We should be able to watch what we want for the money you pay, and to not have that access is so outdated now.
It's ridiculous. It's like subscribing to Netflix, Apple, Paramount Plus, Disney Channel, but you can only watch Teletubbies and Antiques Roadshow, isn't it? It's just so poor for the consumer. And I get the age-old argument. I get the thinking behind the 3 p.m. blackout and that kind of thing. But no, I get it traditionally. I don't think it should last anymore, because I wouldn't say they're two separate species, but I think they are different between your match-going fan and your television fan. And obviously some of us straddle both camps. But the argument in the past has been, well, if we start showing every Premier League game that kicks off at 3 o'clock on a Saturday and we make that available for people to watch on television, then it's going to hit, we're local to kind of Halzone and Stourbridge. There's not going to be that many people turn up at Stourbridge on a Saturday afternoon or at Halzone Town on a Saturday afternoon. I don't buy that argument anymore, because if you want to go out and watch live football, you will watch live football. Because if you were that compelled to watch whatever kicked off at 3 o'clock on a Saturday rather than going down the Grove to watch Halzone, you'll watch it illegally anyway. So I think it's a bit of a redundant argument, and I think the cost so much for all these TV subscriptions. If you're getting all of them, like we say, you're probably knocking on £100 a month if you're doing it all above board. They can offer some kind of premium package anyway. Like if you spend £100 a month on your sports subscriptions, you can have a bespoke premium package, which, like you says, you either have a menu of games that you can pick whichever one you want from, or you have a season ticket for your club and you have every game that they do. I just think it's ridiculous now, with all this money that's washing around in the Premier League at the moment, with exorbitant transfer fees and wages and all these kind of things. That's because we're being fleeced for so many different TV packages. But people have said before that the bubble will burst, and I've been saying this for 10 years, that the Premier League bubble will burst, and it doesn't show signs of it. But surely TV, I don't know the figures, and perhaps a good journalist would have done research before going on in this impassioned rant. But the more people who are streaming games illegally is going to start having a massive knock-on effect for how the Premier League and the big leagues are funded, because there's going to be less and less TV subscription packages. So it is going to end up kind of eating itself in the end. But no, I just find it ridiculous that a multitude of countries could have watched that game no problem. In the West Midlands and in England, you couldn't. It just baffles me, really.
Yeah, I'm with you. The argument, again, I'm working on an away day, match day anyway. So the argument of if it's not on if it's on TV, it's going to stop the away fans going. The 3,000 or 4,000 or so at Anfield yesterday still sell out that location if that game's on TV. And there was no point in my mind yesterday. I thought, Villa's not on TV at 3 o'clock. Oh, I'm going to go to Kiddie Harriers and watch them play non-leagues. Not interested in that. I'm interested in Aston Villa. And like I said, I'm working anyway, so it's a slightly different argument. But just because it's not on TV, I'm not going to go and watch non-league. Little rant there, then, out of the way. I know you've got to go in a sec. Just very quickly to end the show, I wanted to talk about the Villa curse and see whether there's anything in this. So this is something that crops up on social media pretty much any time there's a player injured, that, Villa are cursed. My social media timeline was full of it yesterday when Diego Carlos went down. We sign a centre-half, Tyrone Mings gets injured. We sign another centre-half, Diego Carlos gets injured. Villa are cursed. So I've got a couple of examples that were sent to me on either the YouTube comments or social media, and a couple that I thought of myself. Just going to quickly talk through any of these and see what you think. Is there any occasions you can think of where you've thought, Villa are cursed? What's going on here?
The only one I can think of is Luke Nillis back in the day. I think as a football fan, you automatically, injuries happen, don't they? But when they happen to your team, you think, we jinxed and we cursed. I'll tell you what, this conversation, where it makes my head go. Have you seen in Ted Lasso? He gets injured, and they reckon there's an age-old curse around the ground, that all of the first team players have to burn something, a possession that's a prized possession that's close to them. Just wondering if we do that. Or the other one was famously. Have you heard the curse of St Andrews, where Barry Fry went and urinated in all four corners of the game, the ground? I think Unai might be a bit too classy to start doing that. But I don't know. What were you thinking then in terms of the curse?
I had a couple that I was sent through to me. Obviously, Diego Carlos signed last year for Villa for big money and was injured for 8 months on his home debut, the second game of the season. Comes back and barely had an injury in his life and gets injured again. You just think, Villa are cursed. The one that I thought of was signing Championship hotshot Scott Hogan in January 2017, who'd scored bags of goals for Brentford. I think he'd scored 14 up until that point, and guaranteed success that for Villa, a proven goal scorer in this division. And I had a quick look for research before we started. I don't think he scored more than one goal for us in the second half of that season. It turned out to be an absolute disaster. And funny enough, the day before I think we officially signed him, we played Brentford, if you remember, at their place. Dean Smith was their manager. Hogan didn't play because he was about to complete a move to us. And it's thinking, well, Brentford are without Hogan, so maybe we'll do all right here. And he's joining us, so the rest of the season we'll be fine. They beat us 3-0 at their place. You just think, we're cursed. And the final couple that I won't talk to massively because I've realised I'll go out in a second. Bradford in the cup semi-final, very, very annoying. That sort of thing just shouldn't happen. Against Man United generally, feels like we've been cursed over the years. Do you remember Federico Makeda? No one else does, but he scored against us and disappeared off the face of the earth. He's actually 32 and still playing for Apoel in the Cypriot First Division, which seems mad because that's such a long time ago. And Adebayor refusing to sign for us due to an act of God, an intervention that maybe the club was cursed, and then Villa were relegated in that same season. So perhaps Adebayor was right. Maybe Villa are cursed after all.
The other one as well was the famous quiz question, wasn't it? The Evo Stas one. Scored an own goal for us. Scored a goal when he was playing for Banica Ostrava, an own goal. Then Villa signed him, and he never actually played a competitive game for us because he was injured. So add Ivo or Evo to your curse list as well.
We've massively got carried away there and lost track of time. So much so that Matt's had to jump off to a meeting and do some proper work. So that just leaves me to do the outro on my own. Thanks very much to Matt for joining me early this morning to chat all things Aston Villa. And thanks to you for watching as well. We really appreciate all the support on the podcast at the moment. Whilst it is the international break, we are filming a couple of pieces this week, so keep an eye on the channel for those. Thank you very much for watching this one, and we'll see you again very soon.